Um, all right, so good evening, everyone. I am your moderator, Arvind. Thank you so much for being able to attend the session today. The turnout for the talk is fantastic. I think we have like 95 people so far, and that's amazing. The fact that we have 95 people here. The fact that so many of you are students is also amazing because the fact that students, especially, are interested in this topic makes us very hopeful for the future because all of you are lawyers and I think potential like future change makers. So if you're interested in this, then the future of police brutality in Malaysia is definitely like a bright one. So police brutality, I think, has recently taken the world by storm, especially after recent events in the USA. The death of people like George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement has brought a lot of global awareness on this issue. And I think we are slowly starting to have similar discussions in Malaysia too now. So um, since we have such a long history of police misconduct, I think like we should have more discourse, more engagement on this issue. This talks, have more talks on this issue basically. So this talk on police brutality by MISI Solidarity is one, it's an attempt to increase this kind of discourse. Before we start, I'd like to thank Amnesty International and MISI Solidarity for helping us make this talk a reality. Thank you so much. I also like to extend my gratitude to my teammates, everyone in BAC, Amnesty BAC for working together with us to make this a reality. Also, everyone's hard work is very much appreciated. So before we start, let's get to know our speakers for today. First up, we have Mr. First up, we have Brian Tan, who is a 19-year-old student pursuing a law degree at MMU University. He is a writer for MISI Solidarity, and he is a part of a team focusing on the issue of police brutality in Malaysia. He's very passionate. Brian is very passionate about queer advocacy and combating ableism. Right. So our second speaker is Shre Maha, a 21-year-old student at the University of Nottingham, Malaysia. She writes and curates for MISI Solidarity too, and is particularly keen on the topic of police brutality and police reform, on top of other issues. She has also been a consistent activist and is a firm believer of educating the public on social and political issues. Right, so these are our speakers. Let me just explain to you how exactly the session today is going to be conducted, the sequence basically. So first we'll start off with, maybe I'll just explain. All right, so first off, like we have this session between me, Brian, and Shre, where I ask them questions and they'll be giving me their input, answers basically to the different questions I ask them. So once we're done with that and we covered like, some of the fundamental issues or topics we want to discuss today, we'll open the floor to everyone, maybe give you guys 10, 20 minutes to ask whatever question you like, and we try to like, answer as many questions as we can before we run out of time. So yeah, that's basically how it's going to be. That's how it's going to work. Right. So let us start with our first few questions. Our first few questions are on MISI Solidarity itself. So I would like to ask both Brian and Shre, what exactly is MISI Solidarity and what is its purpose? Maybe.
Okay. Before that, can I check, is Shre here? The connection has...
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Yep, I'm here. Yeah.
Shre, should I start or you start?
Okay, so I'll start, it's fine. Okay, so just to let you guys know what MISI actually is, it's a youth-led platform that covers every progressive issue under the sun. So that's our main motto. So we try our best to make all this information very accessible and very, very, very simple so that anyone can understand. So yeah, Brian, do you want to tell us our 3 guiding principles?
Yeah, sure. We have 3 guiding principles, and they are youth power, direct action, and intersectionality. Youth power basically means like we are the future. So There's already a huge portion of Malaysian youth who is even more socially conscious than ever, and it'll be great for them to have an avenue to channel all of that energy into making meaningful changes. And here in MISI Solidarity, they can do that without feeling subordinate. The second one is direct action, where I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Um, we believe that the power to change things lies in the people, and we can't, or we shouldn't, rely on the government and wait for the government to fix these issues. So here at MISI Solidarity, we empower and we equip people to be able to speak up for themselves and take actions for themselves. And lastly, intersectionality, like what Shre has said, we fight for every progressive issue under the sun because we believe that every forms of oppression do not operate or do not exist in a vacuum. Yeah.
Shri, do you have anything else to add?
Not quite, but I can explain on what makes MISI different from other platforms. So to start off, we don't really have a niche, like Brian said earlier and I said earlier. We cover every progressive issue. There's no such thing as that, one social issue weighs more than another social issue. Try our best to really cover all the fields. And secondly, within MISI itself, within the members, the age gap is almost non-existent. Even if there is, it's a very small age gap. So then you have less perceived power balances, and everyone expresses themselves comfortably, and like we're a big family.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you guys could just tell us like how people like me, students especially, can like join and contribute. What avenues are there for us to like participate in your activities?
How to join MISI Solidarity? I think you can go on Instagram or Twitter, and our username are the same for both platforms, is at @msolidarity with an I at the end because it's the BM spelling. And you can look at the link in our bio. It's a card link, and you'll find a lot of information on MISI Solidarity. Read our primer, see what we stand for, what we're all about, and if that sounds like something that you want to be a part of, there's a registration form where you fill in your details, and our beloved secretary will come back to you. If you scroll through the link, I think you can find a lot of issues that we are campaigning for as well. So don't be afraid to just hop on board, and any specific causes that you have in mind that you're passionate about, you're able to just pitch it to the organization, and anyone who's interested to fight it with you would, you basically assemble a team just in the organization itself. Yeah.
Nice. So we will, right, I think
Oh, also,
we'll get back to that later too.
I'm so sorry, I have something to add.
No. Go on. Yeah.
When you register with us, please do not worry if you don't get an immediate response. We usually recruit in waves, so give it a month or two, give or take, and our secretary will, be sure that our secretary will reach out. Yeah, okay.
We'll be sharing your MISI Solidarity's Instagram account and also their email, their email address towards the end of the session. So for those interested, you can always like contact them, try to reach out to them. Okay, so let us begin with, the police brutality itself. Like, let's start talking about it.
Okay,
maybe you guys can start this off by providing some background.
Yeah, you were saying?
Maybe you guys can like provide some background and context to the issue of police brutality. Just explain like general stuff. What exactly is it? How is it in Malaysia?
Okay, so I think everyone at this point is very familiar with the topic of police brutality. They know that in many instances, the police has harmed people that they're supposed to protect. So, okay, in Malaysia specifically, the conversation of police brutality has existed for a very long time. because you see it very spoken about now, because after the whole George Floyd's death and the whole BLM movement being reignited because of that, the conversation has sparked even more towards the people here. But then certain people like Swaram, Human Rights Watch, and MadPat have been spearheaders of the topic on combating and shining light on police brutality. So again, some of the cases you'll be familiar with because they were publicized are Kogan Anandan and N. Dharmendran. So these cases, really made people aware on the existence of police brutality here. So if you were to ask me, or anyone really, on where Malaysia is on the topic of police brutality on a whole, and police accountability in specific, say that we are nowhere near there, which is very sad if you think about it. So to even further break down what I mean by police accountability, especially in terms of the legal aspect, is three bills. You have the EAIC, the IPCMC, and the IPCC, which is tabled but not passed. And out of all these three, only the IPCMC works in actually combating police misconduct.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Shre talked about the background of police brutality in the local context very well. I don't think there's much to add.
Nice. We'll actually we'll continue to speak a bit more about the bills themselves, the IPMC and the IPCC later on. You guys can just explain what exactly both of them, what do you call it, what they encapsulate, what exactly they are. But before that, let's get on to the next question, which is what failure in our system has actually brought police brutality?
Brian,
It's a
you wanna
loaded
take this?
question.
Yeah, this question is loaded. Well, I think first of all, I want to address that. I think it's wrong to say that the system is failing, because it's not true. Nothing in the system is actually failing. In fact, I think it's working exactly as intended, because if the system was at all interested in holding police accountable in the first place, why are there so many mechanisms to protect the police from accountability? So let's go through all of those mechanisms. Before that, I think I want to point out what are the actors involved here. The police institution for one, the judiciary, and most of all, the government. So what mechanisms are protecting them from accountability? The first thing that comes to mind is secrecy laws that protect the police institution. I think it's quite commonly known, right, that a lot of what goes on in the institution is classified and not publicly known, public information. So for instance, we have the IGP standing order, the Inspector General of Police standing order. Standing orders are basically the rules of procedure, and they have these rules of procedure for a lot of things like arrest and use of firearms. So when all of these are made state secret, the public do not know the police SOPs, and we won't know if they comply to it or if they have violated it. And this essentially lets the police escape accountability, because we cannot hold the police accountable if we do not know what they're accountable for. Yeah, okay, the second mechanism, I think, is the substandard police training. According to international standards, if you are to employ lethal methods, it has to be the last resort. It has to be absolutely unavoidable. But what goes on in Malaysia is completely different. I think there have been countless accounts where it was shown to us that the police are not trained to diffuse situations. They jump immediately to use lethal force way too quickly. And I want to talk about an example of that. But okay, before I give that example, I think it's only sensible to first give a trigger warning that the themes of death and violence are discussed ahead. So if those things trigger you, please take appropriate precautions. I want to talk about the 2010 case of Aminur Rashid, a 15-year-old boy who was driving without a license, and he failed to stop at a roadblock. What the police did was that they fired 21 bullets, 21 bullets from a submachine gun and killed the boy. I think, I think there's zero justification for the police to do so without first de-escalating the situation. It's a car chase. And then there's inquests. Inquests are basically formal investigations into the causes of death. And under our criminal procedure code, whenever there's wrongful deaths, the police have to conduct inquests. But what actually goes on is that the police institutional culture does not take complaints of abuse seriously. And when they do, it is the same police station whose officers are the perpetrators are leading the investigation. It's corrupted. And I think the lack of enforcement of the government also comes into play here. Like what Shre has said from the very beginning, police brutality has been going on way before the BLM movement, and the EAIC and Suhakam has had countless complaints made to them in the past. And in response to these complaints of police abuse, they have made a lot of recommendations to curb the issue to our government. But the government has thus far neglected most, if not all of it. And not only that, the Ministry of Health also fails to ensure that their pathologists are reliable. Pathologists are the people who inspect the body, who conduct autopsies. And these pathologists, what they do is they falsify postmortems to provide cover-ups for the police. So an example that comes to mind, another trigger warning before we get into that example, Coogan and Nandan's case where the first postmortem concluded that there was fluid in the lungs. He died of fluid in the lungs, and the family of Coogan was unsatisfied, so they had a second postmortem done, and the second postmortem revealed that Coogan actually died of kidney failure, and the kidney failure was induced by blunt trauma to the skeletal muscle. I feel like I'm missing something. Hold on. Also, our judiciary, we can't leave our judiciary out. Our judicial system makes it incredibly hard to prosecute the police officers. I think an example of this is the 2009 federal court case where they established that if the victim is unable to name the specific police officers involved, they can't find them guilty. So what happens in Malaysia is that most police officers on duty do not actually wear their identification name tags. So we have cases like Shahril Azlan's case, where he was shot. He was shot by the police at a roadblock, and the police was in plain clothes. So because Shahril failed to identify them in court, his suit completely failed. So, okay, wait, I think I'll just give a brief recap of how bad the situation is here. So not only, right, is the institution secretive, so it's hard enough to gather evidence as it is. Then there's the investigations that are very corrupted, that is led by the same police station. Then the government turns a blind eye to this issue completely, and the pathologists are busy covering up for the police. On top of that, you have to name the specific police officers who are responsible for your abuse. That is our system. And none of what I have said earlier was a failure. All of these mechanisms work in tandem to make sure. Okay, I'm sorry, I spoke too much. Yeah, Shre, go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh,
So
go on,
just
like.
to further explain what Brian had said earlier, uh, according the legal system itself has failed so badly in combating police misconduct. And one of these initiatives was the EAI. So the EAIC is the Enforcement Agency Integrity Commission, which is actually currently active and running. It's existed since 2009. And the thing about the EIC is that it oversees 21 government agencies, not the police alone, which is actually very overwhelming if you think about it. And here's the thing, it's also stretched out in a sense that it has to take care of 21 government agencies. Secondly, it's also very under budgeted. As of last year, they were only allowed 8 million annually. And to make matters even worse, they have also got completely no administrative power, which means that they cannot carry out punishments and they can only investigate. And it's very important to note that last year, over half of the complaints sent in total to the AIC were to the police. Like the complaints were from the police. You know what I mean? Like people make complaints because of the police. Okay. So yeah, this goes to show that the police actually need their own independent commission and they cannot rely on the EIC alone. One very important piece of event is actually the investigation. And when they investigated the case, they had kept a very detailed account of the timelines. And this entire timeline, clearly illustrated all these horrible acts that were inflicted on Dharmendran leading up to his death. And despite the clear-cut evidence and the unspeakable nature of the crime, none of the police officers responsible were actually punished. Like they got off scot-free because the EIC does not have the power to do so, like to inflict any sort of punishment. Which, keep in mind that the IPCMC does. The IPCMC but also punish. So to summarize, I'd say that the EIC is completely ineffective in keeping the police in check because they have to see so many people, and they also lack, a disciplinary bite.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm, think, yeah, we move on to our next question now. Right. So power structures refer to certain rules, institutions, or assumptions that determine which stakeholders have the most influence in a community.
Mhm.
From what I've read, MISI Solidarity believes that often the culprits for many of our social issues, for many of the social issues we face, are motivated by certain pre-existing power structures. So my question is like, what pre-existing power structures of bad faith actors have brought about police brutality in Malaysia?
Mm,
Okay,
Shri, should I?
so Brian, you want me to take this first part?
Yeah, can.
Okay. So when we talk about bad faith actors, the first thing that comes to mind, like right off the bat, is how police try to solve crime by repressing said crime. Is that the police brutality is usually justified by the cops um, by saying, I'm just going to fight fire with more fire. So the thing is, you don't really solve crime by inflicting violence on the criminals. You solve crime by addressing the community's root of social welfare, like the root of the crime. Because in many cases, crime isn't committed just because someone can commit. It's usually a desperation because certain communities they are so marginalized and disadvantaged that
Mm-hmm.
crime tends to be the only thing that they can do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So this desperation drives them into a life of crime. And then, the police don't see that aspect of it. They only see that, okay, this person, he committed a crime and I have to punish this person. So they never ask themselves, oh, why did this person commit crime? It's never a question.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to answer the other part of your question that is on, I think, on pre-existing power structures, I want to address two power structures that I think are inextricably linked to the issue of police brutality, which is racism and classism. And there are two ways that these two power structures affect the problem. First of all, in relation to crime, racism and classism is definitely what contributes to crime itself. These two forms of systemic discrimination often leads to marginalized groups being, socioeconomically disadvantaged. And examples of this would be limited to none really, access to education, to job opportunities, to healthcare. And so they're more likely to be forced into crime. I think a great example of this is Indian gangs. Considering the history of Indians in estate labor and just state neglect, where they are excluded from a lot of rural development programs, it really traps them in this vicious cycle of poverty and leave them with no other options than to resort to gangsterism and find a sense of community and support. And yeah, moving on, the second way that racism and classism impacts police brutality is how it creates internal biases within the police force itself, and how these prejudices often influence how the police deal with different individuals. For example, I think a great example is how it is highlighted during the pandemic, where the huge difference of degree of enforcement between the rich and the poor is like exemplified during the pandemic. On one hand, we have politicians having huge gatherings and without a mask inside, without following any SOPs. And then on the other, we have, I remember 3 refugees who are out looking for food for their families were jailed for 3 months for violating the MCO. And what about that student? What about that student who briefly pulled down his mask and was immediately approached and fined 1,000 ringgit by the police? And another example is like racial profiling, where the police, they have heightened suspicions when it comes to members of certain ethnic groups. Shre has told me in the past, like she was being driven around by her friend in a vintage Benz, and they got stopped by the police and was forced to call her friend's father to confirm that the vintage Benz was theirs. So all of these things really work in tandem and influence how the police target individuals, and ultimately, like how Shre said, how they justify brutality. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Also, to answer your
It's
question,
actually true.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you have something to add?
No,
Oh, sorry
continue.
about that. I wanted to reply to user PC. Yeah, we are recording the session, and the session will likely be available on our Facebook page. So you can always like just watch it there. The entire video will be there recording. All right, Shre?
What?
Yeah.
I think you're lagging. Was it just
Oh, really?
my end?
Yeah, I think Arvin,
lagging
we're
a bit.
ready to move on.
All right, cool. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
No worries.
Okay, so we've gone through like the problems existing within our society, certain like prejudices and systemic problems that exist in the in the system itself that propagate police brutality. So let's just like try to address, maybe try like bring like some reforms that can be enacted, that can be implemented to solve this problem. I think earlier Shre mentioned the IPMC bill. So this next question will be related to that. I think there have been some attempts by the parliament to address police misconduct, and this has resulted in the IPCC bill 2020. This bill, however, according to many, is said to be a very watered down version of the IPMC bill 2018. So the question is, what exactly is the IPMC bill? How is it different from the
How is it?
IPCC bill, and how will it be effective in solving the problem of police misconduct in Malaysia? It's three questions basically. What's the IPMC bill? How is it different from the IPCC bill? And how will it be effective in solving the problem of police misconduct? Yeah, so maybe, yeah. Brian, will you go first?
I think Shre is way more well-versed on the content of the IPCMC bill than I am, so I think I'll defer to Shre on this one. Shre, are you there?
I think she disconnected.
Oh,
Maybe we'll give her a minute.
okay.
Very sorry for this, guys. It's live.
Um,
What can you do? All right, she's back. Let me repeat the question.
Shre, are you
You
Was
there?
it about the IPCMC bill?
Yeah.
I'm here. Okay. Okay. So just to briefly explain both the IPCMC and the IPCC, the IPCMC is an independent commission to investigate the police. So this is a body that exists outside the police force to investigate the police force. So they only investigate the police alone. And in a way, initially when it was seen as an initiative in police reform. So what is the commission actually appoints members, and these members will then investigate the police, and and then give punishments as they seem fit. A really important thing to note is that the IPCMC actually also improves police welfare. So they give welfare recommendations on things like police allowance and housing. So this makes sure that the police, like the junior police especially, are not like underpaid. And this might seem like a win-win situation, but when it was introduced, the IPCMC bill on a whole, it received so much police opposition that it was eventually dropped. So to move on to the IPCC bill, it's decorative. Like it does nothing to put it simply. It's actually even more lenient than the EAIC. As you guys remember, the EAIC can only investigate; they cannot carry punishments. Same with the IPCC. And the IPCC is actually modeled after the IPCMC, but it excludes some very important aspects. One of it is actually the setting up of a disciplinary board and executive powers to impose any sort of punishment. So again, the IPCC has no disciplinary authority. They can only investigate and not punish. And two of very important things that were included that one is that an officer can produce documents that can be abused as an escape clause. For example, let's say if the police officer was questions, hey, why did you, fire at a person who was innocent? The police officer can easily just say, oh, this guy was threatening national security, or I did it to save the country. And he would get away with it because as long as he had document to prove so, it would be allowed. And secondly is the SOP of standing order. Standing order is basically the IGP's advice on how they should carry out that day's duty. And this section allows the police not disclose information. So this brings us back to
You might be lagging. Very sorry.
To add
What's your,
on,
what's your
to add on to what Shre has said about the IPCMC bill, not so much on the content, but to bring a sense of perspective. Like what Shre has said, the government withdrawn the bill last year because there was a lot of opposition from the police, and I want to address that because to the police, I think the IPCMC should really not be seen as a punitive body. It is not established to punish the police. In fact, I really think it improves and benefits the situation, not situation, the institution as a whole. So how does the IPCMC improve this institution? I think on top of what Shre has just said, where they make welfare recommendations to the police, it also improves by holding accountable all of the police officers who have been making y'all look bad, like making the institution look horrible to the public, and essentially discontinue their participation in the institution. So the IPCMC really phases out the bad apples. And on top of that, because they can look into complaints, they have the authority to investigate very thoroughly. I think it rids the institution of white-collar crimes as well, which is pretty prominent among top-ranking police officers. So to the police, I really think this bill, you stand to gain from this bill. The IPCMC is not your enemy. Well, not unless you're out to do some questionable thing.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, if it's beneficial to like everybody, like, then even the police, benefit from it, like ultimately in the long term.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question. What are some other fundamental reforms that you think must be made to reduce or curb the issue of police brutality? In addition to the bill passing the IPMC bill.
Yeah, I think the best right now is still to push
Or
for the
like, how can we
IPCMC
actually
to be established, but there are definitely other reforms that can address the other actors that I previously mentioned. For example, I think a very fundamental change for the police institution, and it's very important, is to declassify all of their SOPs and their IGP standing orders. This definitely increases the transparency of the police institution. So any non-compliance of those SOPs, the public will know, and it can be made enforceable against those who violate them. Another would probably be the Ministry of Health. I think they really have to ensure that their pathologists are responsible. I think they can do so by establishing an external auditing process to audit the post-mortem reports. And if they find out any pathologists are being negligent and covering up for the police, they have to take disciplinary action. And as for maybe the judiciary, I think the Attorney General's chambers definitely has to take on a way more active role in investigating custodial deaths and instituting these criminal prosecutions. For other reforms, I highly urge everyone to look into the work of Human Rights Watch or Lawyers for Liberty. Their incredible work. They have assembled quite a comprehensive list of reforms to be done.
Right. Okay, so we understand police brutality. We understand like what can be done to reduce it. In the long term, what do you think are the greatest systemic problems that this problem, police brutality, can give rise to? Like, what domino effect does it have on like other areas, like other parts of society?
Shre, do you want to take this?
Okay.
Okay.
I guess one of them would be the fact that police brutality actually exacerbates
I think Shre is cutting off again. So sorry, please hold on.
I'll just give her a few few minutes.
Okay.
All right, she's back.
Okay, so yeah, I was talking about race and class issues. So Brian had already said earlier that racism sort of go hand in hand when it comes to police brutality. And here's another fact: police brutality actually makes it worse. So, like, policing as a whole,
So you think you're still lagging?
Um,
Maybe you could like disconnect and just try like get back in the session again. Or
yeah. Mm. Hold on, I'm so sorry, guys. Let me contact her. Um, okay, I think I'll talk a bit about this.
yeah, maybe you could take that.
What's the question again? I'm sorry.
All right. So like what other problems can police brutality cause? Like what chain effect can it have?
Okay, like what Shre was saying that police brutality exacerbates race and class issues. And I think that's very true because of how entrenched racism and classism is in policing, especially when it comes to poorer communities where they do not have any leverage to protect them. Like the elites, they have their wealth and their status, and they're able to have great defense lawyers, and that allows them to get away with a lot of things. But the poor community is definitely way more, way more not only
Vulnerable.
policed, and yeah, also way more vulnerable. And how race comes into play is that the poorer communities are basically almost comprised of racial minorities, although not, exclusively. The higher rates of arrest that these communities face would also lead to less employment opportunities, because as long as you have a record of, you have a criminal record, most of the time um, employers would not consider you as a potential candidate. And so police brutality really serves to sustain and worsen the problem of poverty. And yeah, I think that's it.
Nice. I think she's back. Yeah, I think she's back. If she
yeah, I'm
has
here.
anything to
I'm so
add?
sorry, guys.
No worries.
That's okay. Do you want to add anything to that, or should we just proceed to the next question?
No, I think Brian, all the thing that he has to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll move on.
All right, nice. Okay, this is an important one because like everyone thinks they sort of know what police brutality is, but they don't have like the full picture. So, what are some misunderstood issues pertaining to police brutality?
Oh, okay, this is interesting. Okay, I guess the fact that I think that police brutality is purely a race issue that only affects certain ethnic groups. Uh, Looking at the facts, right? Indians do disproportionately make up custodial deaths, while they're only 7% of Malaysia on a whole. They are 23. And this aside, Malays actually make up a majority of custodial deaths, but these cases go severely underreported. And Indian deaths happen to be the ones that are most publicized. So the
Yeah.
misconception is that Indians and other marginalized ethnic groups are the most vulnerable when it comes to police. And whenever we try to highlight the proportion, a lot of people comment stuff like, oh, what about my race? So what about, Adib? And yeah, it's just, it's not a competition is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And we think like, and the fact that people think that, we think that one race is more important because we only talk about the disproportionate Indian deaths. It's not true. But it is important to recognize the racialized pattern of the issue. Like racial profiling, Indians get racial profiles on the daily, and racial profiling does contribute to police brutality being a race issue, but it doesn't mean that you're pitting two races against each other and saying that, oh, Indian lives matter more than Malay lives. We need to address the nuances of the issue, to acknowledge it. And it affects everyone. Like police brutality, police misconduct, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter how old or how young you are, it doesn't matter how or what ethnic group you belong to. We're all at risk. Like if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could potentially be a victim of police brutality.
Yeah. And I think another misconception that is very, very important to clarify today is the misconception people have where they tend to individualize this issue, and so they would fail to identify the root problem. So what happens is cases of police brutality circulates on the internet, and people are appalled, people are angry. So they look into those cases and find out who the specific police officers are involved, and they condemn them. And I think that's where the misconception lies. Like, those police officers are not the root of the problem. And by getting rid of them, by successfully putting them behind bars, you are not going to stop these cases from happening over and over again. Like, because this issue is bigger than a few policemen or women. It's institutional and it's structural. So when I condemn the institution, I am not saying that your uncle, who just so happens to be a police, is a bad person. I am not. When I condemn the institution, I'm talking about their secrecy, where no one knows what goes on, and except they are working on it. And then months goes by, or even years go by, where nothing actually happens. And at the end of the day, we still know nothing. And I'm talking about their ineffective investigative mechanisms where complaints are not looked into. And when they are looked into, it's led by the same police station. And I'm talking about the government for neglecting this issue for so long and for failing to establish the IPCMC. I'm talking about the Ministry of Health, who fails to make sure pathologists do their jobs. I'm talking about our laws, our judiciary, that often give so much leeway to the police to get away with their crimes. And I'm talking about our Attorney General's chambers, who oftentimes act as the defense lawyers for the police rather than, instead of prosecuting criminals by representing the people. So by all means, express your outrage, make your anger known, because I'm angry too. But direct that anger towards the institution, towards the structures, the existing structures that props up the institution and the institution itself that is built in a way that enables morally corrupt officers to thrive. And that, all of that is the problem, not the police officers that you personally know or the ones that you hold dear to in your life. The entire institution and the structure surrounding it, the whole system is the problem. It's what we're fighting against. Yeah.
That's it. Shre, do you have anything to add? Oh wait, I think you have answered this, right? Yeah, you have. Sorry about that. Okay, so next question. This is super important. I think it's very relevant to everybody here. Because like, okay, this question is like, what can ordinary people like us do to help solve this issue? Because we know, like, yeah, Parliament's there. Parliament has to pass the IPMC bill. You know, there are all these like powerful, actors in this, this issue. But like, what can normal people do? That's the question. Like you, me, students. Yeah.
Shre, are you there? Shre.
She disconnected.
I'll just speak my part first, I think. I I think a great way to get involved is through Swaram. Swaram has been the NGO here that's spearheading the campaign against police brutality. They actually have a petition out right now for you to sign. It's called Tolak IPCC, Kembalikan IPCMC. If you can't find the petition, go to MISI Solidarity's link in our bio. You will find it there. And circulate that petition as much as you can. And Swaram has projects here and there where they would require more manpower. So I think just really tune into what Swaram's doing. It's incredible work, and actively participate in them whenever you have the chance. Three. Okay, I think another way is also you can hold, I think people also have to realize that they, it's pretty effective to hold your MPs, your members of parliament that represent you accountable. MISI Solidarity have a great post on this, how to apply public pressure and lobbying to your MP. Send them emails to push for the IPCMC bill on your behalf, and continue circulating the hashtag IPCMC now. Tag your MPs directly on their social media accounts. And all of this lobbying is most effective when done in masses. So yeah, just try your best to make it known that the public's attention is on the IPCMC, and their every action until the IPCMC is tabled will be scrutinized. Yeah.
Yeah, in my yeah, I can go on to the next one. Yeah, in my opinion, like all of us, like minute. Right. So like all of us are like we're voters, right? At the end of the day, like my take on this is, wait, why am I taking my take on this? Basically, like what you said, is true. Like we can like do our own, like our small part in this also, like by creating awareness, posting things on Facebook, talking about it, just having more discourse, just getting people to like know about the issue, the importance of this issue. Because at the end of the day, like when we vote, maybe we can make this like something that's like, something we want the party that we're voting for to actually like, have in their manifesto. So as more people know about it, more people like give priority to it. And then that's how we like, yeah, that's like, I think that's like what we can do, like our small part in this, just creating discourse and forcing our leaders to like take some action. Okay, so Shre isn't here yet. Maybe we'll just like continue to the next question. What aspects of this issue, I think it's similar to the previous question, but it's a bit different also. What aspects of this issue do you think require increased public awareness? Like specifically, what part of this?
Well, I think there's a tactic that the police employs that not many people know of. It's called tukagari, and it's actually a horrifying tactic. So I want to shed more light on it. So basically what tukagari means, I think the English term is chain remand. What it means is that the police is able to arrest and rearrest you over and over again, even if the court don't find you guilty. So how they do this is also that they were empowered by some draconian laws that are in play. I think a great example of this is, I don't know if the audience saw the video. There was this video that was circulating around like last year, Deepavali, where 27 Indian men were in police custody for like almost 50 days, I think around 50 days. So I want to talk about that case. The 27 Indian men were suspected to be involved in a shooting incident in Banting, and the police arrested them, and the court didn't find them guilty, but the police continued to detain them. And the whole process, I think, lasted from September to November, and they were at that point they were still detained. And so how do they accomplish that? There's this law. Oh my God, what is that law? Security Offences Act. Yeah, Security Offences Act. It allows the police to remand or apply to remand and detain them for a continuous 28 more days just for the sake of investigation. So imagine being locked up for 28 days for a crime that you might not have committed, but only because the police is investigating you. Another law that does this is also the Prevention of Crime Act. The Prevention of Crime Act does the same, except it's 21 days, and this can be accumulated. So what happens is that 27 Indian men were brought from this police station to another, and charged under this law where they are detained for 28 days, and then again charged under the other law that then they are detained for a further 21 days. So I think shedding light on this tactic is important because of how scary it is. Like, you might not have even committed the crime, and if the police is targeting you, chances are they are able to detain you for a very long period of time. Yeah.
Maybe we can get into maybe we can start the open floor session now and like just try to like answer everyone's questions. We have quite a few interesting ones actually in the chat. Right, so let's start with Jing Ru Lo.
A lot from Brian.
Brian, yeah, Brian raises a lot of pretty interesting points. Okay, let's go with Brian first. As law students potentially entering the legal profession, what do you think your role is, our role is in diminishing the harms of police brutality or changing the structure of and institutionalized flaws of the police? So basically, what can law students specifically do? Because I think most of us here are law students, and I think the like just compared to other professions, like we have like a greater ability to affect change on this issue. So what can we do? Lawyers especially.
Well, it says that the moderator is free to answer as well. So if you want to give your thoughts, I'm all ears.
I
don't know where that came from. I mean, dude, I'm not an expert.
Yeah, I'm not an expert too. I think my answer to that question is, I don't think by virtue of being law students, we have way more, I don't know, insights or whatever, like we're way more qualified to enact some form of change. I think our role as citizens, like the same as everybody else who is not a law student or a lawyer or in the legal profession, is really just to keep educating ourselves on police brutality and for the structured and institutionalized flaws of the police, really just target. Wait, how do we even target that? Wait, okay. I think like the best thing we can do right now is still to push for the IPCMC bill. I don't think my answer will change depending on whether or not you're a law student or part of the legal profession. Yeah. Moderator, feel free to
next. No, I mean, like, I personally think that like law students do have, because like there are a lot of things that we know that other people don't. Like, just by virtue of learning the law, we know how policies are drafted. Like, we're more likely to actually like be handling cases related to this, this kind of issues. I don't know, just by virtue of like what we know, the knowledge that we procure from law school, I think that like makes us a bit more well equipped to sort of do something. I don't really know, like maybe like like I'm not exactly sure what exactly we can do. But like we do have like certain advantages that normal people don't really have. Most people don't know what is IPMC bill, is PCCMC bill, but as well, like compared to them, like we are more likely to like have some awareness of this, like do research on this kind of like all these legislation and these
I agree. So I think if knowledge,
I don't really know what I'm like.
If knowledge is the only thing that we have
knowledge and maybe like
other people, I think
through that, like maybe we have like great ability to like educate people on what's actually happening. compared to like normal people. Just from like just using what we know. That's how I see it.
Great, let's move on.
All right. Brian has another question also.
We don't have to get to all of Brian's questions.
We can
Yeah,
do other
exactly.
people's questions.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Jing Rulo's question then. Okay, let's see. Nevertheless, public shaming and naming prompts public awareness about police brutality issues, and it's the first step to making legal reforms work. I think Jing Ru was talking about shaming the police.
Yeah, I think when I say that when I say that the misconception is when people condemn the specific police officers, I'm not trying to say that they are not deserving of condemnation. Of course they are, but understand that the issue is much bigger than them. That's all. I think you do make a good point where we publicize certain cases and make it like a viral thing, and that can more public awareness and then more pressure on the government to make some legal reforms. Or I think that's a great point.
And you also have to remember about sedition laws, because criticizing the police has to be very careful. Like when you actually speak up against the police, you need to take extra precautionary steps so that you don't get called by the police. So yeah. So yeah, let's move on. Anything else?
Like you guys can also unmute your mics and just ask your questions. Like you can like do that also. Like won't hold it against you. Or you can also type it. Right.
Yeah, Shre, I can't hear.
Yeah, still lagging, I think.
Very limited freedom for expression.
Shre, would you be able to like repeat that?
Okay, does anyone want to answer Carol's question? No, does anyone want to answer Carol's question?
Carol,
yeah.
All right. From the perspective of a law student also. This is similar to what Brian was trying to bring up.
What can law students do to raise this issue and make enough noise? I think everyone is capable of finding creative ways to make noise. I don't think that's something that I have to go through with. Like, just make noise, educate everyone around you, make them aware of how severe the issue is. Because oftentimes everyone you're trying to be the US too much. You're only blowing things out of the proportion because of the BLM movement. But tell them no, things are bad here. And it not only affects a certain group, but also everyone else. So that's our initiative that we really have to start caring about this. Yeah, I agree. It's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing to actually take action. So that's why I respectfully disagree with moderator. I think law students with more knowledge maybe, but without putting it into actions, it's still, I don't see the point. Yeah.
We have something from Balkis also. How can the police decide to POCA or normal 7-day duration? Can they just
I think
choose?
if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, right. This
It's actually not a 7-day duration. Our federal constitution makes it such that we can only be detained for 24 hours. That is what's normal. 24 hours, providing that the court does not order for us to be detained longer. For the Prevention of Crime Act, they have to apply to a magistrate, and the magistrate have to grant that extension of the detainment period application for for the people, the victims, to continue to be detained after the 24-hour period. But what happened in the Banting case is, even though the court rejected all of their remand extensions applications, they still continue to transfer the 27 Indian men from different police stations to another. So that effectively extends the period of victims being detained with or without the laws. The laws are just there to aid the process, but without those laws, the police are still free to do whatever they want, I guess.
Cool. Any other questions?
A concrete progress is to push for the IPCMC. Like, ask your MP, table that bill and get it passed. Yeah.
And tell your family to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
Influence the ones in your house, influence your friends.
Yeah, to make it trendy also, like hashtag IPCMC, do something on like Instagram.
There is a hashtag. There is IPCMC now. It's actually by Swaram. It's great. Yeah, it's IPCMC now.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so everyone, like, make sure you like get on this train of this chat.
Okay, there's another question from Balkis.
Yeah,
is the IPCC created to substitute the IPCMC? Yes.
Is IPCC
yes,
created to substitute IPCMC?
Because the opposition, yes. But it was also to, in a way, shut up activists and people like Swaram so that, they wouldn't ask, hey, how about the police? But then, people are smart. So we know the specifics and we know that it doesn't work.
Yeah. A lot of police brutality is really just intimidation tactics from the government. The police is just the embodiment of those tactics. And don't say sorry, you don't know much. I don't know much. Please. Ugh. I think that's all.
Right. One more question from Yongzhang. Okay. Policy lobbying from youth demographic.
I'm not sure how we lobby without going through our MPs. I don't have much knowledge on that, but well, the traditional way is to take it to the streets. Not that I'm suggesting it at all.
Right. I think that's all the time we have. Thanks so much for agreeing to speak for us, guys. Having this discussion itself is super. I think it was really insightful. A lot of people. All of us learned a lot about police brutality. About I didn't really know much about the IPMC bill and the IPCC bill before this. I think you guys really shed a lot of light on it and like what we have to do to like make this a reality. Okay, so I have a few more questions, but sorry guys, like I don't think we have enough time to go through all of them. I think JC wants to say something. Our president, the president of our club, wants to.
Thank you, Arvin. I'm going to spend 5 more minutes to make the closing remarks before we all leave. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I'd like to thank MISI Solidariti, Brian and Shre for coming and joining us today. I think I can speak for all the participants that we've learned quite a lot. And also thank you, Arvin, for the very insightful session and your work as the moderator. Okay, and I would like to apologize for the participant limit. Actually, we've received quite a few feedback that some of you guys can't join. We actually didn't know that the participant limit was 100. We thought it was 200. So we're sorry that some of your friends couldn't join. But the recording for this session will be available on our social media pages, and it will also be sent to MISI Solidarity in the future.
Yay.
And yeah, and I'd like to say that for future events like these, you could always follow Amnesty BAC's Instagram. We also have a Facebook and Twitter account. In February, we will have a Rights for Rights campaign. It is a petition letter writing campaign for a few causes. And one of those causes are about police brutality as well. It's about a man who got blinded after being in a protest. So for future events like these, please give us a follow. And if you are a BAC student, you can always sign up through the link in our bio. If you're not and you would like to be more involved with Amnesty's events in the future, you can always join as an Amnesty Malaysia member. I think Liang has sent the link in our chat box. A link will also be sent to all of the participants' emails after the event. So go and check that out. And lastly, okay, there's no lastly. That's it from me today. Thanks everyone for coming. Do you guys have anything to add?
No, thank you.
Thanks,
you, everyone.
JC.
I really hope this session has been informational to you guys in any way. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, really.
Oh yeah, sorry, I remember the lastly now. I want to ask for everyone's help to just fill up this form that I just sent in the group. It's a feedback form. It'll take you maximum 2 to 3 minutes. Please fill that up. And everything I've mentioned in the closing remarks, all the links and of the sort, I will send in a follow-up email to all of the participants in the future. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us, and I'm sorry I kept leaving.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It happens. Like, what do you expect, Davina?
Yep. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thanks.
Oh, wait,
Thanks,
sorry,
guys.
Brian and Shre, do you guys want to stay for a photo session? Let me just take a screenshot.
Sure.
Oh, sure.
All right. Okay, look in the camera. 1, 2, 3. All right, got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Guys, be